Hey, you're listening to Stop the Scroll, a social media marketing podcast, and I'm your host, Heidi Schmidt. I'm a social media strategist and agency owner with over 15 years of marketing experiences helping businesses grow online. We'll be diving into what you need to know so that you can show up confidently online without the overwhelm. Get your notebook ready to jot down some amazing marketing gems, and let's dive into it. All right, welcome back to another episode of Stop the Scroll. I'm your host, Heidi Schmidt, social media strategist, agency owner, all the things. And I have a special guest on today, Lara Ziobro. I think I pronounced that right.
That's it.
Yes. So I've known Lara for a really long time through our journeys as bloggers back in the early aughts, the mid-aughts. But she comes to us with over 20 years of experience in large financial and professional service companies. She's a digital marketing leader who designs and executes digital, social, and paid campaigns that engage and inform diverse audiences across platforms and channels. She currently leads owned content creation within marketing and corporate communications for Weber Shandwick, a global communications and engagement firm that represents nearly half of the companies in the Fortune 100. She's a digital brand storyteller. I've been following her for years and absolutely love her content. She's written copy for people from Beyonce to Katy Perry to corporate executive leadership and for campaigns targeting a range of consumer to B2B prospective talent. She's produced podcasts, created videos, and website content that showcase the agency's point of view, leadership experts, and key research initiatives. She's also passionate about creating inclusive and accessible digital experiences and workplace in general for all users, something that we all need to learn a little bit more about. She's a disabilities advocate, passionate about causes including autism acceptance, stroke awareness, neurodiversity, cerebral palsy, in addition to being a leadership team member for Equitable, Weber Shandwick's business resource group that supports employees with physical disabilities, chronic illnesses, and the people important to them. That's amazing. Like, your career has just taken off. I feel like when I first met you, you were working for, was it Citigroup?
Yes. So that's where I started with an internship. My career has had kind of two big chapters. Like, I started off down the path of working in HR, but I did study international business with a marketing emphasis. So I always had kind of a passionate interest around the marketing space. I like to famously say that I took the first ever internet marketing course at my college, and it was kind of like cobbled together. There wasn't a lot of resources. There were a lot of handouts, and there was one book that we used, but it was just kind of like a mishmash of things. But I've kind of always had an interest and passion for the space. You know, I had several, we'll go back even further, several GeoCities accounts back in the day. I did all of the hard coding, like HTML. I would I'm a very passionate Tori Amos fan, so I would create my own MIDI files to play when you loaded my GeoCities page. So I've just always kind of been interested about the digital space. Obviously, back then it wasn't with a business intention in mind. And then kind of just continued down the path of, I worked in HR for quite a while. And so wasn't obviously working and touching really anything marketing related, but I did kind of do more communications focused work. So I was working within the Latin American headquarters for Citi down in Miami at the time, and kind of worked within that space for, I don't know, it was 10 or so years. And I worked in compensation design, very different space than I am now. So more the analytical side behind how we paid our people, but pivoted towards the end to doing within kind of an internal communications focus, doing the internet site for our international assignment program, because I kind of started at Citibank, left, and then came back. So we kind of connected when I was in the DC area, and I was doing a little bit of a stint working for a law firm. But I went back to work for Citibank in New York. And I made the big shift within my time there. And this is another fun social media story, because I posted on Foursquare, which went through to Twitter, which connected me with someone. People may or may not know she's quite a big influencer. Her name is Anna O'Brien. She runs an account by the name of Glitter and Lasers, and has a lot of great content around body positivity. And she's a real dynamic character. But I posted my check-in to Foursquare through to Twitter, and she was working at Citibank doing social media at the time. And she started messaging me saying, oh, someone works in this building that does social media. And I who are you? And I was like, oh, someone has found me out because I worked in HR where I felt like, you didn't have access to social media. That was like
Mhm.
restricted on our profile. So I was just like, no, no one needs to know. I was like, who is this person? How do I make this go away? But like she kept messaging me and we stayed in touch and we became really good friends. And so when she decided to move on to a different opportunity, she told the team, she was like, I know who you need to hire. She wants to get into social media and like she's been doing it for forever personally, like just loves it. I used to like text in tweets like on my phone back in the day. So like I've always been doing
Mhm.
kind of like trying all of the things. And she was like, she understands the company, she understands the tools, like she's the perfect fit. And she kind of told him, and if you hire her, I will help her get up and going. And if you hire somebody else, I might not do the same. So I got this great opportunity to switch over and like was brought in as this VP of content and social, doing something that I was passionate about, yes, understood, yes, had done it professionally, not at all. So that's how I made like, and it's like a big transition, but it's like I took kind of a big chance and I was open
Mhm.
to all these different opportunities and I was always kind of trying to figure out a way to make it happen. And so, yeah, so that's kind of like how it all randomly lined up so that I was able to make this switch over. But I mean, it was really doing this so passionately and consistently personally that I was able to really kind of point to my success and be like, oh, I built this platform and I've used all of these tools and done all of this stuff that really helped me to make this transition over. And it was a very different space. So like we're talking a lot here about LinkedIn. I very rarely did content on LinkedIn when I was at Citibank. So I was in the role for quite a number of years, and our content was more focused on Twitter because we did a lot of customer servicing. So it was
Mhm.
a lot on Twitter, a lot on Facebook. We did a whole campaign towards the end of when I was there. It was our millionth fan campaign. So we had like a big contest that we did, and I did a lot of really fun sort of offline meets in person moments because I worked on all of our card holder offers that we did on our social channels. So got to do like, surprises concert with Justin Timberlake. I got to do the four night run. I think it was 4 night run where Lady Gaga shut down Roseland Ballroom like at the very end. So we got to do a really cool like card holder event beforehand with I guess a sound check, and I got to take my personal camera and take photos of Lady Gaga and use it for
My
work.
god.
And then we did a few different campaigns with Beyonce. So that's when I did the Beyonce. I mean, then I did also photos with Billy Joel, his series at Madison Square Garden, which I think he's finally picked a final date, but it like has gone on for forever. But it was back when I was still there. But I got to do that and meet John Mayer, all kinds of really cool stuff. So that was like a really obviously different space. And then when I had this opportunity, this role popped up at Weber Shandwick, and I had been working at Citibank for a while. It didn't take me very long to realize that once you work in social media in one specific area, you can either choose like that's going to be your path for forever. You're going to be like financial services, social
Mhm.
media, and if that's you, that's awesome because there's definitely going to be other companies that want someone like you who's going to go keep coming back and be able to bring that expertise from job to job. But I was like, do I want that to be me? I don't know. Because I had the HR experience as well. So I was just like, this is a lot of financial services. So this role came open at Weber Shandwick, and it was a really cool role because, in talking with the team, they never had anybody who had done this before. So I was coming from sort of a bigger group at Citibank, but this role would really allow me to own a lot of the processes and kind of establish how things were going to be going forward. And also would, allow me to move into the agency space, which I candidly did not really understand. Like I thought I
Oh,
understood
it's
it,
a
but
it's a
I did
beast.
not. Yeah, I mean, and it's been kind of the best. I like to say that this role gives me the best of both worlds because it's like yes, it's within an agency, and I get to kind of like tiptoe into like all of the great work that our clients are doing, and I get to do that for all of our clients around the globe, which is kind of amazing. So again, I don't have to specialize. I get to be a little bit more across the board, but I got to come into this role, and it's an internal role. So I don't work with any specific client teams. I work like one of the groups that I work with most closely is all of our executives and all of our different like client leads and our business leads to kind of make sure that we're telling the best story for our agency, that we're highlighting the big campaigns across our clients, and also that our leaders are like to helping to encourage them and give them best practices around platforms like LinkedIn. So when I came into this role, LinkedIn was part of the puzzle, but all of the pieces were just kind of parts of the puzzle because there really hadn't been anybody focused on social. So the team that I sit in, we're the corporate communications and marketing team. And historically, all of the focus has been around more traditional media. And so
Mhm.
what we were focused on was, press release to announce like the latest offers that
Yeah.
we have, to announce our, latest, leader appointments and business structure changes, things like that. And historically, the social media content was just kind of an extension of that. So they would create the press release and then they would, put it into like a quick little summary and then they would push it out on Twitter and on LinkedIn. And like it was very like and it was just, it was part of the way that the team was structured. It was just not the focus. But the agency itself has been very focused on all things digital and kind of innovation. And so it was the perfect opportunity to come in and kind of reimagine that. I came in, we had very minimal resources. We now have a designer who helps to create all of this stuff. When I came in, I would say our channels were more evenly split in size. And then I think just based on kind of the content that we're pushing out and like the way our people are gravitating, our LinkedIn has become like overwhelmingly the largest audience out of our social like footprint. So I don't know the exact latest stat, but it's somewhere in the ballpark of like 80% of all of our followership is on LinkedIn. And
Oh,
that's just
wow.
kind of how it's evolved. And one of the things that has kind of been part of my experience just by being part of an agency that's so large is that I also kind of have helped to think through the structure of how we're governing creating accounts for our agency. So when I came in, that was kinda like the first thing I did. We had, like, almost 400 social accounts around the
Oh,
globe
wow.
for all of
That
our
is a
different, like.
lot of
Yes.
accounts.
Yes, for all of our regional teams, all of our local offices, because we have now, I think it's 59 locations around the globe. We kind of, like, changed things a little bit over the years, but, I mean, they all had, their own account on this platform, that platform, and we still have a mix of that, but what we really did and what I really focused on was paring that back and making sure that we have some sort of like standards as far as how we're approaching our social channels and that like obviously if things start to die down on certain platforms that maybe we're sunsetting them. So this all played into LinkedIn kind of being a big thing for us because I felt very strongly that we needed to have a central platform on LinkedIn because it's not only how we as an agency are showing up, but it's how we're building out that network of our employees. And so
Mhm.
that was kind of like the one place where I was like, okay, like we need to double down on making this just one global account. And that sort of not only has helped to make it more of a robust platform for us, but I think it's kind of ingrained it more in the memory of our people, our leaders, all of that as well. So it's really sort of helped to fuel that growth. So that's like a very long-winded explanation of kind of like how I came into this role and kind of how it's evolved. It's been really interesting and LinkedIn has been such a key part of that.
So, why do you think, kind of focusing on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and why do you think that LinkedIn is so powerful for corporate storytelling? Because, 10 years ago, LinkedIn was more about like networking and job
Mhm.
searching. And that's really the view that so many people had in LinkedIn. Like in my early agency days back in 2014, LinkedIn was not really used for like lead gen.
Mhm.
It was still kind of an early platform. So, how and why do you think it's such a powerful tool for that corporate storytelling today?
I think it's like several reasons. So I feel like people on social want to brag a bit, to tell their own story. And I feel like as more content has gone onto LinkedIn, it's just an easier outlet for a lot of employees to start to amplify the great news that not only is like saying, hey, I'm working for this really like amazing company, or like we just won this major award, we won this major client. Like it's kind of part of that. And I think the more that organizations create compelling and interesting content around those moments, I think that gives it like that fuel. So I think as people become more excited about sort of those moments to tell those stories, I just feel like LinkedIn has just kind of built out where people are like, oh, this is like where I can professionally brag. So I feel like it's just like it took people a little bit longer. And I also think they didn't focus as much. I felt like so long for on all of the different like multimedia pieces on the platform. So I think
Mhm.
as things became more interesting and as organizations, companies started creating more content with that in mind, I think it also just fueled that fire because then I think it was like, oh, like I'm not resharing. We'll go back to the basic canned press release. Like I'm not just resharing a link to this press release that's not exciting. Like I'm sharing this really cool example of how, my agency is using AI to fuel campaign creation and stuff like that. And like, this is this really cool visual that shows why this company is so cool and I'm part of it. Like that is so much
Yeah.
more interesting and compelling. And then I think companies are just doing a better job too of telling those stories and then making their people a part of the story. That's sort of been a big thing for us, has been unlocking that audience. I think, I know there's so many different tools that you can use for employee advocacy, but right now we're just like using LinkedIn itself for a lot of this and like
Mhm.
building LinkedIn considerations into all of our internal communications. So I think the more like that and I think companies have been doing this in general, like start to like play into it as like this external platform that we're just making it part of conversation. I think for so long people just viewed it as like, oh, I'm on LinkedIn. Like they didn't want to, like they
Yeah.
thought it was just like, oh, if I talk about being on LinkedIn, it's because I'm clearly looking for another job and I don't want my company to like think I'm doing that. And I think it's just like the more content, like as it started to like have, and they've just changed the platform, I feel like too, to like fuel it more, obviously. Like they have all of the like breaking trends and like news. And I think as LinkedIn started to broaden its scope, I think it made it a safer place for people to be like, oh, I'm going to share things here and it's okay. I'm not going to like see any kind of like backlash against me for being active on LinkedIn. It's okay now.
There's also, I feel like, to your point, like LinkedIn as a platform has evolved, but it's evolved very differently than
Hmm.
Facebook or Instagram or even TikTok, in the sense that like their goal is to keep you on the platform longer.
Hmm.
So that's the big drive on Reels. But I don't feel like I feel like LinkedIn has very much been about more connection building and more of that. You're not getting like the polarizing echo chamber content that you tend to get on like Instagram,
Yeah.
because there's not really as much. I mean, they have monetization obviously
Hmm.
on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, they have it. And it's interesting because this is like new-ish. I've been seeing a lot of conversations around them starting to do more paid content with like influencers on the platform.
Oh, I
So
don't like that.
I know. So I have a little bit of mixed feelings about that. But I mean, they definitely have had, I mean, it's been for over 10 years. They've had these, top voices on the platform, which I feel like they've called a few different things. LinkedIn also rolls things out and then sunsets them and doesn't tell you. So like there were like LinkedIn stories and then all of a sudden they were just kind of like gone. So they try different things and if it doesn't stick, it's like you almost like blink and you're like, did I miss it? Like where'd it go? So speaking of employee advocacy, for a while they actually had a tool which was fabulous. I'm really a little bummed that they took this one away again with no notice. But they had like it was built into the platform and it was great because like we could create content. So if we had, a big announcement, we could create our post on our channel, but we could also like drop in with different assets and copy. We could
Mhm.
drop it in the section for like employees to tap into and create posts. And it was great because like then they wouldn't have to reshare. It looks like they're creating this original post. So it would make it easy for them to have that sort of like higher quality content. But again, I guess they decided there wasn't enough return. So they like did away with that feature. But they had for a while, I think they were actually calling them almost like LinkedIn influencers. I forget what the titling was, but they had this group of people that they thought were kind of like top executives, top thought
Thought
leaders.
leaders.
Yeah. And supposedly that program is now closed, but those are all people that they really kind of like boosted visibility for your content in their algorithm. And so like you would see content from them a lot because
Mhm.
they've identified them as like a thought leader in certain key areas. And those people seem to still carry that sort of like halo effect. So they have like larger followings still from before, even if maybe they're not as active now in that space. But they've rolled out like this newish thing. And I think they're calling it Top Voices. And I did it for a little while. It's kind of funny. All you have to do is like contribute. There's like collaborative articles that they have on the platform.
Mhm.
If you contribute enough and like people find your content useful, it ranks you and it gets added to your profile. It's a very I did it for a while just to kind of like test it out. And it definitely drove more visibility for my content, but it just felt kind of like a silly game. Like you're kind of like,
Oh,
it's like it's
yeah.
a way you can kind of like game the system a little bit, but I was like, this is taking way too much time. And like I really don't feel like it's showing like it's not because I'm like this doesn't show that I'm an expert in whatever. It just shows that I'm spending a lot of time because I want this label on my profile. So they're always trying to like play around with like different ways to kind of add that to people, like that credibility layer to people's profiles and make it easier for people to follow sort of some of those thought leaders. But I feel like they haven't quite figured that out. And I don't know that this paid content on LinkedIn. Do you know corporate Natalie?
Yes.
Yeah. So like
Yes.
she's been sharing some things that it's clear that they are like promoting some of her content loosely. So we'll see how that evolves. I'm kind of I don't know. There's that I'm not really too hip to, and the fact that they really are pushing like games on the platform, like that doesn't.
Oh, I haven't been checking that. I think I've read about it, but meh. Eh.
I just feel like I like seeing people comment on like some of the news and trends, and they do a good job. There's several newsletters you can
Mhm.
join, you can opt in for, which I've been kind of perusing but haven't found the most beneficial, that will kind of talk about like their breaking trends. And if you share about those, let's say, like as an executive on the platform or as a leader on the platform, and you share using their hashtags, they will potentially pull you into like news summaries and like highlights and stories, which gives you kind of like an added boost. But sometimes it's like the controversial things, which it's like our leaders aren't going to want to necessarily do. So we haven't really,
Yeah.
yeah, I've been spending a lot of time following it, but not a ton of time actually making use of some of those features. But they do periodically kind of share things across where it's like, oh, a designed asset suite around International Women's Day, and your leader can share and like potentially get pulled into that story. So there's some interesting moments where if you follow a lot of these different newsletters that they offer, that you can kind of find other moments to tap into to get more visibility for your people on the platform.
So, speaking of executives,
Yes.
so you've had success activating executives and employees as brand advocates, which I always
Yes.
say, especially on LinkedIn, like the more active your employees, your team is, the better your content's going to do. What's the key to getting that kind of leadership buy-in into a LinkedIn presence that feels authentic and not forced?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the big buy-in is just like what we did was spend probably a year and a half sharing data. So like we would every time that we would have a big moment, we would try to make sure that we would build everything out in a way so that we had like a link to drop into internal communications and things like that. And we started slow, like where we would just include it on, maybe got buy-in to include it on one announcement. And then once we started sharing the data on how that performed, that really got attention because, we know that if we share links at that moment when people are excited about like a big award win or a big client win or something like
Mhm.
that, if we share it at the right time when you're communicating to them the announcement, then they're going to act on it. But if they have to find it on their own and then decide to do it, and also I think there's, again, like back to that fear and like, am I allowed to do these things? Is it okay? I mean, like people are almost kind of looking. I mean, when I first joined the organization, people were scared to post on LinkedIn because they were like, I don't want to share in a way that our clients haven't approved. I don't want to share in a way that our leaders don't think is okay. And they were just like really like nervous about if
Mhm.
they were approaching it in the right way or if they would look silly or all these different things. And I think the more that you can communicate as an organization that that's a behavior that is not a negative, that that's something that you want people to do. And not only is it a good thing for you to do, but we're going to like make it easy for you to share it in this way,
Mhm.
that makes it more approachable, and the more people do it, then they kind of get in the habit of doing it and that it's okay, and they see that and they know that that's something that the organization thinks is a good behavior and sees value in. We've also created, when there's a key moment happening, and we've had several of these recently where we have a big announcement, we will actually create specific posts to send across to different teams so that maybe we have research that's being announced and there are different teams across the agency who could share about it in different ways. So we're creating posts where it's like, from the point of view of those different teams so that it makes that moment like less about just like, oh, this is a big moment for the agency, but this is why it's important to this group and their clients and this group and their clients. And then giving them custom assets to like share. So a lot of this stuff has been fueled by that communication. And then the game changer for us has been that we didn't have this probably until like 3 years ago. We have like a dedicated designer for our team who sort of helps to do all of this. So, and obviously there are different teams to kind of help
Mhm.
that create more content, but a lot of that stuff is created at the center and we're able to kind of package that up and it doesn't become this big lift on the teams. It just becomes like, here's this gift, here's this content gift, here's all you don't have time to create the post. Great, here you go, we got it. And kind of bridging that gap and setting that expectation has made it so that a lot of these teams now are just doing it on their own. So it's kind of open, like change that, like that mentality, and it's made like, oh, this is acceptable, this is okay, and like I'm gonna embrace this, and oh, I can do this and I can do that. It's really changed our approach. And so like it's a good problem. Like a lot of times now we have people on our team who are scrolling across on LinkedIn looking to see about client campaigns that are being shared about on there, because our teams are sharing a lot of times on LinkedIn without even sharing it with us first, which is good because like they're like comfortable in using the platform and they're using it in a great way. So I think that's really helped. And then just like that timeliness has just been huge for us. So I think getting ahead of those moments and planning that into those internal communications, and like the fact that my role is part of this team and like I'm able to kind of feed into those moments has really shifted that for us and made that possible, and has also developed the value for our leaders, because now we have so many leaders that are now interested in using LinkedIn because they see the value of like the visibility, the moments, all of that kind of stuff, and that what it can bring not only for them to elevate their visibility, but for the agency as a whole.
You talked about data and using the data
Hmm.
to really get that executive buy-in. How do you guys measure success on LinkedIn beyond just like follower growth or impressions? Because we feel like those are kind of
Yeah.
the key metrics, but more than that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the most important thing for us is that engagement stat. So like we
Hmm.
want people, like we can obviously get a ton of visibility for content, but if no one's really engaging with that content, it doesn't really, say a ton. So and LinkedIn has been kind of an interesting platform in general because we have different platforms that we use to monitor analytic trends and things like that, but LinkedIn gives you such little visibility into like how your competitors are performing. And so we've been spending a lot of time just kind of tracking some of this stuff a little bit too manually, but just so we can kind of see. And, we look very closely at, how our engagement rate is performing. We look kind of at more what those like industry averages are. But I mean, in general, we've seen our engagement rate has really skyrocketed, because what we're doing is, so back to that consolidated LinkedIn presence, we are using the central platform, but we're also doing a lot of targeted content. So, we work very closely. I work very closely with our teams around the globe. And so we have a lot of content that we post in Germany, in German, to our audience there, and those
Hmm.
posts, because we're targeting it so focused to that audience, like the engagement rate has gotten so much better because we're no longer blasting these niche posts to like
Yeah.
a broader audience. And I feel like our audience has been really appreciative of that. And I feel like our engagement rate has gotten so much better as we've refined that. It's really made such a huge difference. And I would say, I mean, there's different stats that LinkedIn actually shares about, some of this data. And like one of the things that they say is, that 30% of a company's engagement tends to come from its employees. So like trying to make sure that you are thinking about your employees when you're sharing your content, and involving them in the process is huge. And then, getting those employees to then share your post. I mean, that visibility for their content
Hmm.
is like 8 times what you as a company are sharing. So it's obviously like you want your company, like you want to perform as good as possible and optimize your content to perform as well as possible. So like we try to keep ours short so it displays well in feed and all of that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But with all of that in mind, like it's really like tapping into that employee audience that really helps, because them sharing that out really gets that visibility that kind of goes beyond what you're able to do all the time yourself. And LinkedIn paid promotions are so expensive that it's like
Yeah.
we do some, but very little. I mean, compared to what I think a lot of companies spend, we don't spend a ton. And I think it's just being smart with those organic opportunities so that you're getting the most return for those posts that you're putting out.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, as you just said, you haven't done much with paid on LinkedIn. So, without that, obviously it sounds like you guys have a great employee engagement
Mhm.
and really targeting your audience. But what else is working outside of those paid opportunities that LinkedIn, every social media platform has?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we also work very closely with, I've worked for years with our recruiting team, so making sure that we're creating content that there's all these different audiences that you're creating
Hmm.
for on LinkedIn, and for us, we know one of our hugest audience is like that prospective talent layer.
Mhm.
And we've been able to create a lot of content, done a lot of campaigns on LinkedIn around that. So that's been really effective for us in getting that engagement. We know that that's like a huge traffic driver on our website. We get so much visibility for it, and people are looking for that on LinkedIn, obviously. And we know from our recruiting team that that's where they get the most quality leads as well. So really focused on kind of coming to them with opportunities, and we don't sort of like over index on it. I feel like we kind of do it occasionally, but like moments where we should create like video content, where we should create employee profiles. We do like a lot of our content where we come to our talent team and say, this is a
Mhm.
great program that we have. Like, let's create this digital moment around it. And that content really has done well because like our people, again, our people want to share about the really cool things that, happen at our agency. So they want to amplify that. And then it's great for the talent because it gives them, sort of the inside look inside of what our agency working here is like and what these programs are, and brings them to life in a way that makes them want to, click apply or talk to our recruiters. Cause I think that's one of the most important things that we're trying to do is sort of get that visibility to the next, the next great class of people to come join the
Yeah.
agency and help to tell that story. And we know that like our people tell the story perhaps the best. So have really
Mhm.
kind of tried to tap into those stories and build those into more digital moments where people can kind of get a look at, we're not just saying, hey, we have really cool people here who do cool stuff. Like let them tell you why, and that's more compelling.
Yeah. Speaking of that kind of behind the scenes content, and, I have clients that I do LinkedIn for, and I always tell them that, like, the behind the scenes, the day in the life content, because a lot of them use it for recruiting as well.
Hmm.
Like, that content is so compelling. When we think about the next generation and what they're passionate about and what they look for in an employer, they're looking for that, like, work life balance and everything. Are there any other trends that you see emerging, especially in the wake of like recruiting, B2B content? Like, what kind of content are you seeing that's really resonating with not just like the prospective employee audience, but also just like that B2B content? Are there any trends on LinkedIn that you see?
I don't know if this is like I would say a trend, but one thing that we've found, I guess it's a trend, that's performing super well are like document uploads on the platform,
Oh,
which
like the document carousels?
yeah, when you like upload a PDF
Mm-hmm.
into a post, which we use a lot because, we like to create, for a while we were doing a lot of animations because animations look so flashy and cool and whatever.
Yeah.
And we were finding that they don't always perform the best because I think, then you're like overanalyzing. Am I spending too much time on this frame? Can people read all of the info? Like it's a whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the great thing about document uploads is that people can download them into a PDF. So it's great for accessibility because they can see all of that information.
Mm-hmm.
They can progress it at their own pace. So if you want to put, I mean, we have a lot of great like research that we launch. And so it's a great way to do that because people can sit there and just read it in a way that like they can enlarge and it's like big enough for them to see everything. But they can then choose and like control how fast they're going through it. So it kind of gives them that ownership. And we're seeing like some of the stuff that we put up, like even if it's something that we're like, oh, this is a very niche post, like I don't know if it's going to be, perform the best. Like we're seeing people will sit there and spend a lot of time going through that. And so, but we again, it comes down to that engagement stack because you have to go into
Mm-hmm.
it knowing like people are going to sit here. If they're going to sit here and really consume this content and they're going to scroll through it, they might not take then the time to go down and hit like or do something else with it, right? So like I factor that into how we view the engagement on that content, but we are seeing that those are performing so well. And so that's been a really big kind of an aha moment for us. And now we create a lot of content with that in mind. Does this make sense to be a PDF instead of an animation? And sometimes it makes it easier to actually get that content live because then you don't have to spend the time to do the animation. So that's been a really helpful thing for us. And I think just knowing that the audience tends to be such a professional audience and that they do want information. And I think a lot of times before it was like, oh, we're going to send them off platform to this other place. Well, now we're just going to let them hang out in LinkedIn, which PS, LinkedIn loves. So like
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn really encourages this kind of content. We're actually seeing like if you don't need to include a link in a post, like LinkedIn is going to give you better treatment in the algorithm if you're going to do
Yeah.
things that are going to keep people on the platform. So it's a great habit to like add into your mix to create content like this because LinkedIn is going to love you for it. We want
Yeah.
LinkedIn to love us. So
We do. Speaking of all, we kind of touched on some of the tools that LinkedIn adds and takes away at their whim. Where do you see LinkedIn heading in the next year or two? Like, what do you think it's going to evolve, and any new trends that might pop up?
I mean, I feel it's so funny because I feel like for so long it was like you got your Instagram, Facebook were like over here, and then like LinkedIn was over here. And I feel like LinkedIn is like shifting across. So I know that they're really focused on video content. So I feel like they're going to try to go after more of like the quick take video content. I feel like that's going to be something you see more. I think we're already seeing that. They're really
Mhm.
encouraging the creation for leaders to create content like this in their feed and for it to not be, this in-depth polished video like you're seeing more
Mhm.
of and like they're doing like all the live video content. I mean, right now the live video content you have to have like an external production partner and it's like more whatever. So I would not be surprised if like, over time they don't kind of come up with more of a solve for that sort of like live content moment that's like less
Mhm.
polished to make it a little bit more integrated into the platform. And then the other thing I feel like they're really encouraging and I think they're going to do even more of, I just feel like they're kind of going after, as an organization, I feel like they're kind of going after that corporate website newsroom. So they're really encouraging the content creation on platform again, encouraging all of that sort of like within their algorithm, getting that visibility for the content. So I feel like you'll see more on that content creation and kind of fueling that. And I think, what we're seeing with like the trends on the side of the feed, I feel like that's going to become even more prominent. And I feel like they're going to figure out a way to really operationalize that in a way that makes it more front and center for organizations to be a little more bought in. Because I feel like now people are doing it, but I think it's kind of a little bit more of a subtle connection. And I think over time, they'll put out more content that will really force that connection more with organizations to be like, hey, do this, like less subtle and more like this is part of what you should be doing on the platform.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of starting to wrap things up here. What is really working for you personally and for your team on LinkedIn right now?
Gosh. I just feel like it's keeping things current. So I think a lot of times in the past, we've really focused on sort of this like super polished content and like spending time with like reviews and like polishing. I mean, I feel like what's really, really working. I mean, do you want to put something out you're not proud of? No. But what's really working for us is kind of building out some of those things, getting these quick takes out in a timely fashion because
Mhm.
really it's starting to be I mean, LinkedIn content, I feel like has like a longer shelf life. You can kind of put it up
Yeah.
and like the engagement just kind of continues to trickle in. But just like any platform, I feel like there is some sort of like timeliness there. And I think you do get the best upside of that whole process if you get it out sooner and so that it's as timely as possible. So I think that's what I'm seeing works well. And then I think approaching my content like I do our corporate content also is very effective. So like a lot of times I feel like, and I think a lot of social media managers and professionals are in this space that it's like your personal content kind of comes last sometimes. And I think
Yes.
I have some things that I've just kind of been like, I'm just going to let this like stay on the cutting room floor because it's like at this point it feels like, why are you sharing this now? But I try to think about myself too as part of that and kind of approach it the same way for myself as I do with our agency, which is like, if this is a no, like if the answer is like, okay, we can't get this placed with a media outlet, like
Mhm.
how do we get it to a yes? Where can it go? Because I think one of the things that we've seen is just how like almost everything that you create has value somewhere and it's like figuring
Mhm.
out the right place. So it's like if it wasn't like if, maybe a media outlet didn't find this story really big, like should we have one of our leaders post that as like an article on LinkedIn? Should we create an infograph? Should we do what like it's just like finding that yes out of the content has
Mhm.
really been valuable because then you're not losing all of that mental effort that you use to create this thing. Like you're turning it into something that will go somewhere and will get the right reception. So I think that's been a really helpful approach for us. And I think being able to turn those content moments into things that maybe ultimately, like if there's some sensitivity and we can't share it on our agency profile, like where can it live? Like, does it go with this executive? Does it go with this like up and coming employee within this team that's like
Mhm.
more of like a entry level person? What is it? And I think that's really helped. And also, we've been doing a lot of content like low like back to talking about like the more simplistic video content and like not as super produced. We've been creating a lot of content using this platform called Veed. I don't know if you know of Veed.
I've heard of Veed.
It's been a game changer. Like it just makes it really easy, which is great for us. So we have Cannes International Festival of Creativity. It's a very big mouthful coming up in June. And it's in France. And like with the time difference, sometimes I need to create something and our designer is not at her computer because it's like
Yep.
4:30 in the morning. And it makes it so that I can hop in. You can load your brand fonts. You can do all of this stuff and you can create very simple videos. You can add in captions, which is very important to me. It'll actually translate your captions. So we have content that we're going to be doing with creatives who are in Latin America who can speak English but are much more comfortable in
Mhm.
their own language. And do I have to clean it up a little bit myself? Yes. But it does a lot of that heavy lifting. So I think trying more tools like that, like this was something I tried on a whim and it's become like a go-to platform for our team. So I think what's really been successful for us is just continuing to kind of try some of these tools and try to build out the things that are going to be our next go-to tools that really sort of help to operationalize some of these content moments so that they become less overwhelming because a lot of times it's like, oh, we need to get something out tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, this would be cool, but I can't, no one's around to do it. I can just like sit down and do this myself. It's great. So it just kind of gives that just enough of those tools to the average user to be able to create some really, really awesome content. So I think embracing those tools has been really helpful for us as well.
I love that. I love that. And finally, what's your go-to advice for someone who's really, whether they're their own creator and they're using it to move their career forward,
Mhm.
or if they're a business owner who really wants to get serious about LinkedIn as a marketing tool for their business? What's your go-to advice?
I think it's just to start doing it. Like that sounds silly, but I feel like I think as you get older, I feel like there's like this perception of like judgment. Like I'm going to share this and no one's going to like it. I'm going to share it and people are going to think I'm silly. I'm going to share it and like no, like they're not. And I think everybody who started using LinkedIn, who all of a sudden built out a following, started with very few people following them, and
Mhm.
they just decided I'm going to post and I'm going to post regularly. I'm going to post on these topics that I have expertise in or that I'm passionate about, and they just do it. And honestly, I think that's been really helpful for me because I see all of the things and I want to chase all of the things, but like really, it's like what are my priorities and what am I excited about, and I just like focus on those, and that's what I share on. And I think that is really the same approach works for companies. It's like, what do I have to add of value? Like when people are coming and I'm sharing things, what are they going to be interested about? I think people, as an individual, people want you to share things that are really insightful that maybe they wouldn't have thought about it with your perspective. I think people are looking for less of like just the generic, like, here's a link and more about like, I'm going to add like 2 sentences about why this is important with like your own take. I think it's the same thing with our leaders. Like people are looking for you to go like that next step to give them
Mhm.
that value and that information. And I think if you show that value over time, then I think your audience builds, and that's the key.
I love that. How can people find you? How can they connect with you to get all of your amazing content? Like I love your content. Like
Oh,
not just
thank
on
you.
LinkedIn, but even on Instagram and TikTok. Like you just put out great content. So
Thank you. My website is Lara Ruth. It's Lara Ruth Ruth .com, which links to all of my platforms. Or I am Lara Ziobro on pretty much everything. So, but yeah, I share a lot of different content. Obviously, LinkedIn is more professional, but I share a lot of more like parenting and like fitness and running content on Instagram and TikTok and such. And yeah, so
love
that's where I
it.
am. Yes.
Well, thank you so, so much.
Thank you
I
for having
learned so
me. This
much.
was so much fun.
It was. And if you're a listener and you love this, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, do all the things. And as always, you can connect with Laura. I'm terrible. I have like a friend that spells it with a U, and you spell it
That
with
says,
Lara, but it's
I know.
like the
I
same.
know.
Oh,
It's all good.
so go connect with Laura and connect with me, as always, at Heidi Schmidt Creative. And until next time, go forth, just create the content that stops the scroll.